Hey everyone, we want to welcome you to a very special roundtable discussion that we're having here at KFOX14 today. We are talking to a distinguished panel of officials here in El Paso who deal with border security, who deal with law enforcement, and we're going to talk today specifically about the Tren De Aragua gang being designated as a national security threat. We're going to talk about what that means in practical terms when it comes to the community and when it comes to law enforcement. So we're going to go around the table here and have everyone introduce themselves. And again, first of all, thank you all for being here and being part of this discussion.
Good morning, Robert. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Omar Arrellano, Special Agent in charge for DEA for the El Paso Division.
Good morning, Robert. JT Stevens, I'm the Special Agent in charge for Homeland Security Investigations, El Paso.
Good morning. I'm Walter Slosar. I'm the Chief Patrol Agent of the El Paso Sector Border Patrol.
Good morning. I'm Tim Sullivan. I'm the Chief Patrol Agent of the U.S. Border Patrol Special Operations Group. And within the Special Operations Group, we have the National Response Unit for BORTAC and BORSTAR.
Good morning, Robert. I'm John Morales. Thank you very much for having us here. I'm the Special Agent in charge for the FBI here in El Paso.
Well, I want to thank you again all for being here. I know that you all have very busy schedules and have a very hard job to do. But let's begin right now talking about TDA, Tren De Aragua, and the fact that it does now have this designation. Let's begin with the Border Patrol. Walter, I know that you were I know you're a native El Pasoan and that you've been here, but you've been newly appointed as the interim chief here for the El Paso sector. What does this designation mean when it comes to your agency?
Well, you know, the Border Patrol was key in identifying the Tren De Aragua coming across, hiding in the groups of people that were turning themselves in under, you know, previous policies where, you know, most likely you would come to the United States and be able to stay while you're waiting for a court date a couple of years. You know, that's all changed very recently. If you do come in between the ports of entry illegally, you are going to be returned back to your country. You are going to face criminal prosecution. But inside the flows that were coming in the previous fiscal years, the last two, around July of 2022, the Border Patrol started to see a criminal organization hiding within those flows. And pretty much everybody at this table and our, you know, state, local, and federal partners came together to really attack that problem, but without necessarily, you know, a designation that allows us to prosecute individuals specifically, or, you know, get them returned to their country. As you know, Tren De Aragua is specifically a Venezuelan gang. We didn't have or don't have the best communication with that country as we're you know, apprehending these individuals, and we were just not able to return those populations previously. So we needed some specific designator, some assistance to be able to prosecute these individuals, and we relied on all of our partners here at this table to be able to identify them, get those individuals into the proper pathway, and now remove those individuals to wherever we can once we've identified them, or at least not release them into the communities as was previously occurring.
All right, so let's set the table, Chief. I think you've done a good job of that, because let's rewind the clock back to when, you know, in El Paso, in the El Paso sector, you had tens of thousands of arrivals, a lot of migrants from Venezuela, and you're saying that within the groups, within the large groups, is where your agents started to notice that there was a particular gang that was, like, again, bring me back to how that starts.
Yeah, around July of 2022,
yeah.
You know, this tactic of large masses of groups coming across and keeping our Border Patrol agents busy while the rest of the border would become open started to occur. We have seen it before in previous years throughout, you know, El Paso sector's history, but it was really taking shape where we would see the large groups of give-ups, and we'd be working through those individuals. As a Border Patrol agent, you know, to reach border security, you got to have 5 things. You need the policy to support you. We now have that. You've got to have domain awareness. You need to know what's happening at the ground level, in the air, and under the ground, so that you can place the third thing. You need impedance and denial, right? We need wall and fencing to shape the operational environment, and that allows us to put our assets where we need them, our Border Patrol agents, our Texas National Guard, our DPS, our DEA agents, everybody in understanding, you know, how that border environment works, and then, you know, we have to have people actually making the arrests. So detect, identify, and mitigate the threats as they come across. We need to know who. That just means we need to know who and what is coming into our border. As we were overwhelmed with these individuals and our agents were going through the process of getting their information, finding out where they're from. You know, in FY23 alone, we caught 75,000 people from Venezuela. So sifting through those amount of individuals to find, you know, a group that we had already started to see was very different than other groups we've seen before, with the way that they've operated in and around not only in El Paso but throughout the rest of the nation, and in Venezuela and South America. We started to see these military-style tactics, individuals who were looking to get into the U.S. We didn't have any criminal history on the U.S. side, but we weren't able to communicate with Venezuela to identify if they had any criminal history. So it caused a problem for us, but we worked through those as a group in this law enforcement community we have in El Paso, and we were able to identify, you know, the individuals, the tattoos they use, their way of operating, to be able to say, hey, this is an individual that is very dangerous and we need to be able to handle them appropriately.
I'd like to circle back a little later here about how you were able to identify the identifying markers, but does anyone else want to jump in and explain to me, I mean, I'm sure that you've all encountered bad actors. What made this group particularly different or special, if you will, that requires this designation?
So with Tren De Aragua, they have the particularity, I think if you were going to compare them, you could say they have the ruthlessness and the violence of MS-13 with the organization of cartels. And they have a particular way of doing things where, fortunately, their number one target is the migrants from Venezuela. And what they'll do is they'll come in and come with the group and usually lay low while they're assessing what's the environment, the other gangs that are present, the other individuals that are there, and then slowly build up. And then once they have the numbers and they have the strength, they're able to then take over the criminal element, bringing in others who either work with them or else are going to become their victims. But all the while, their main targets are, initially at least, the victims, the migrant population from Venezuela. And that's also the situation that we encounter here, where they'll come to El Paso, but El Paso is an area where they won't stay long. They'll try to move out to those other states where the Venezuelan population tends to accumulate, conglomerate over there. And here, it's been one of those things where it's slowly been building up. Back in 2022, like Chief mentioned, there was that surge where we saw thousands of people coming at the borders daily.
Yeah.
And in that sense, when we were requested to assist, we provided analytical support, agent support, and also strategic support in order to identify this threat that was coming into the community through El Paso, and then from El Paso going out to other states.
Was El Paso unique in the sense that you were seeing this happening as opposed to other sectors? You know, like or was it just that it was first identified in this sector?
I think to follow up what John was saying in terms of TDA, and I'll refer to them as TDA from now on, is they exploited the migration crisis that we were in and we're currently in by moving so much so through Colombia, through Ecuador, up into the Darien Gap, into Panama, Central America, Mexico, and ultimately into the United States. And while migrating to the United States, they were able to identify with other drug trafficking organizations, and they're being exploited by either continuing on with their criminal activity in drug trafficking, human smuggling, extortion. So they make those networks, right, where when they're getting into the United States, they're able to align themselves with other drug trafficking organizations and continue their criminal activity.
Can you break down a little bit for me about like the specific crimes against the migrants themselves? I know that's what you focus on a lot.
Yes, so for us, we have teams that are embedded with Border Patrol. They have agents that are part of their anti-smuggling unit that are working hand in hand with us. So anytime we would get a smuggling load, we would go out and respond to that. I think going back to what the Chief mentioned and what SAC Morales mentioned was that once we started seeing the increasing numbers, we started placing individuals out with the Chief's personnel at their facility to begin interviewing these individuals, because we didn't know what we didn't know. And so we put people in there to be able to interview them, to understand them, to look at their tattoos, to talk with them. I think for us, what concerned it is we've always had violence with migrants. And these entities or organizations that we would investigate, they were known to us. They were tied with La Línea and some other local organizations, again, still violent. But the TDA, they were different. I think like John explained, they come in, they kind of hide, they lay low for a little bit. They would normally, historically, as they moved to a region, they would bring in a lieutenant and individuals that were under the lieutenant, and they would go sit into the Venezuelan neighborhood, and the Venezuelans knew who they were by reputation.
So it had that kind of hierarchy.
They had that kind of hierarchy.
Yeah.
They definitely have a hierarchy. And they would move in and they would rule that. I mean, I think we saw that at the Gateway. I think we saw that at other locations that we were working around. And I think for us, we started seeing it after that when we got our first most significant lead on the TDA was when they came down from Denver. We had the jewelry heist that occurred in Denver. We had received information. We started watching that. We called Border Patrol, Texas DPS, the FBI, and we all worked together because, again, they had just robbed a jewelry store in Denver. It was a very violent, brazen robbery. We bedded them down at the Motel 6, and we were able to eventually get in there, get warrants, and arrest the individuals there. And, you know, speaking with the Denver detectives after that, they said that was the most organized crew he had ever seen in his 30-plus years. So for us, we knew, okay, this is a significant concern, and we need to collaborate and work together on this.
Can you sound off on in terms of the lethality of a group like that? You know, just give me your sense of it.
So once they're here, they feel they can operate with impunity, with total disregard for our laws. They have no conscience when it comes. They're looking for a target of opportunity. They're looking for power and they're looking for money. So they're going to prey on U.S. citizens, on migrant communities, and if they can exploit sexually or through violence, they're going to use those communities as prey.
I see. You mentioned the Gateway Hotel. I want to get to that. Obviously, I think that's when it really came to a lot of El Pasoans' attention. Excuse me, I'll clear my throat here. But let's again rewind the clock to 2022. This gets on your radar. Mm-hmm. You start to raise the alarm. Were your concerns met with concern from Washington at the time? Were you being listened to?
I think to answer that question very bluntly, they knew it was a threat. I don't know that the totality of the threat was understood specifically. And we did a really good job of building that out. We had to start from zero and build out what this threat network looked like and what the threat was. And as we progressed, from July of 2022 to December of 2022 and into 2023, and that's when I think it became really obvious to everybody that Tren De Aragua was a threat to the United States. What was happening here in El Paso, and El Paso was the lead sector out of the entire nation for Venezuelan encounters. So by, that just meant there were also the lead for the TDA encounters, and the group coming together to be able to identify that network and build it out. Then as 2023 progressed, the rest of the country started to see the TDA threat. You started to see it in New York, Ohio, Chicago, Colorado. And again, reiterating that what happens at the border affects the rest of the country. Border security is national security. And we started to see those trends become more, those tactics that Tren De Aragua uses become more prevalent, more brazen. As that picked up, I think the American public really got behind the fact that we as a nation came together and said, we're not going to have threats like this in our country. I will say it may have taken us some time to build up that threat network, but we definitely did a good job right here in the El Paso community as a team of law enforcement professionals, state, local, federal, to be able to build that threat picture out. We had to sound the alarm. We had to say the story and tell everybody what was going on because we were the tip of the spear on that process.
And when you sound the alarm, listen, I think we all understand that the Trump administration made clear that border security was going to be a priority. But the prior administration, under the Biden administration, let's now go into 2023, let's even extend it into 2024. Were you getting the support you needed to address what was a very specific threat? I'll open that question to everyone.
Not on the scale we are now.
Not on the scale we are now.
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you give me a percentage of the difference that you're seeing?
So Chief Slosar mentioned it. We were sounding the alarm. So it was acknowledged, but the scale and seriousness of the threat was not acknowledged, I would say.
Okay.
And I would say, to stop the threat, we really had to shut off the flow. And to shut off the flow, we needed the flow of migrants coming forward. We had to shut that down. To be able to do that, we had to say, if you come into the United States, you will be returned to your country. We had to make that policy change. And as that came in, as we were able to receive that, we've really seen, one, a lot less. I mean, our illegal entries that are occurring went from a high around 2022, 2023. One day we had 2,700 illegal entries in one day in 2023. Now we average, our 7-day average is about 60 individuals trying to come into the country illegally. So really being able to stop that threat was the approach we needed, and that was, keeping people in their home countries, keeping them from making that dangerous journey by saying, if you come here, you're going to be returned to your country. It's probably the most humane thing I've seen occur in a long, long time in the border security world.
And beyond that, I mean, you're just talking about operational control, right, Chief? Because, I mean, you have to get a sense of who's coming in to understand how to vet that threat or situation, or I guess just vet anyone that would come in, right? Is that safe to say?
That's safe to say. And now that the volume and the traffic has slowed, that gives us the collective opportunity to identify and go back and get the vetting on these individuals that were released into the interior of the country. And now we can apply a serious consequence to those when we go after them anywhere in the country.
And that's where I think there begins to be a narrative of raids occurring around the country. What it is focused investigative efforts by this collective team here. And like the chief said, when it slowed down, it really allowed us to sit back and look at who have we let in, where are they at now, and how do we go get them. And again, we've allowed them to come into the country, and now they've spread out throughout the country, and now we're having to find out where they're at. And that's been a significant challenge in and of itself.
Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration that's happening on that level now with your agencies?
Definitely, and I think without the collaboration that we see right here, we would not be able to at least have the advances that we've had so far in being able to address this threat. One of the things that we had to do was learn about it, and then to that end, one of the efforts that we made was we brought in experts from other countries who had already engaged with them, who had encountered them, and we brought the law enforcement community together to be able to hear from them what worked, what didn't work, what their trade craft was, and also how they evolve and how they've grown. And understanding that history was also key in being able to then target them, because now we have a path of what to look for, what we're trying to find. But it was a collective effort. And everybody at this table, including our local law enforcement partners, El Paso PD, Texas Rangers, you name it, the letters of the alphabet, they were there during that meeting, and that was a big push for that. And also, we were able to bring in officers from across the country who hadn't yet seen it, who had heard about it. We were ringing the bell, we were letting them know this is coming your way, this is going to happen. Wow. But there was a little bit of doubt because, like we mentioned initially, when they initially arrive to an area, they're not going to go in with a blast. They're going to be in there quietly, they're going to sit down, they're going to observe, like JT mentioned, until they're able to take control of the area. So being able to bring them in to inform them of what to be on the lookout for, what to pay attention to, was a big push in being able to address it across the entire country.
No, and just to follow up on that, Robert, one of the things that I want to make clear is that collectively we already work together, not only just on TDA operations, but across the spectrum in targeting these drug organizations or any type of organization that's harming our national security. With this sounding of the alarm, like the way Chief mentioned, is it brought us all together. It brought all our holdings, our equities, to where everybody had something about this organization. And it gave us the opportunity to put everything on the table, collectively get together, come up with a game plan to start targeting them and start executing these arrests across the board.
Okay. Did you want to jump in on that, JT?
Yeah, I would just say for the El Paso community, they have a great law enforcement team here, federal, state, and local, that care. And this has been about egos aside and efforts in front. We would have almost monthly meetings with the U.S. Attorney's Office, with the District Attorney's Office, with the county attorneys, with the heads of the chief, the sheriff, DPS, and we would all sit at the table because we know that we don't know everything that's going on in the city or the county or even in DPS's region, but we would sit down and we would listen to the other leadership and say, what's going on? What are we missing? What do we not know? And how can we help? And that allowed us to really be very deliberate and intentional in our focused effort. I think that's why we were able to make the impact we did with the gateway and some of the other areas that we did enforcement actions. I think that's why we were able to hit Albuquerque and almost remove that cell completely from Albuquerque now. That's why we were able to hit Las Cruces and do the same thing. So I think this collective effort has made a success in this area, and this is why it's not here right now, and it's in other locations.
JT, this is a good time to circle back to the Gateway Hotel, because you mentioned EPPD, you mentioned the county attorney, among all these other local entities that you all cooperate with. Listen, I think for a lot of people, what was going on at the Gateway came as a shock. And this is September of last year. The county attorney has to use an abatement measure to close that place down. And if you read the court filings, it seemed, based on the investigation, that there was Tren De Aragua present at that hotel. Were you all aware of that situation as it was unfolding prior to the action by the county attorney?
We had all been working together on that. So I think most everybody that's sitting here has individuals that sit at the TAG, the Texas Anti-Gang Center. That is a collaboration of all of us, focused very specifically on gangs. They would work with the local patrol districts, and they had that information, and they had worked it all along. So as we would get briefed up, we would come back and go, okay, what do we need to contribute towards that so we can make an impact? Because for us, while we want national security and we're focused on national security, we're about public safety as well. We live in the very communities that we work, and we want it to be safe. We want to be able to go downtown with our families. We want to be able to go out and eat. And if that's the environment that's down there, that's not safe for us or anyone else.
But that seemed to have been going on for months before
Correct.
action was taken.
Well, there were actions that were being taken all along before that had occurred. As we begin our investigations, we're conducting surveillance. We're following individuals away. We've got undercovers in there. We're working online and looking, excuse me, we're online and we're looking, are they trafficking any of the women that are there at the hotel as well? Because
Which were
that's
some of
what
the
they're-
allegations.
Yes, absolutely. So we were really trying to ensure that we had a thorough understanding of what this organization is doing, how they're doing it in El Paso, so that when we made the move to be able to get rid of them, that we made a significant impact. And instead of just disrupting, we wanted to be able to dismantle the organization so that they couldn't be influential here.
You all have mentioned that there are ways to identify the TDA gang, that there are certain indicators from behavior to tattoos and such. Why did it seem as though that there was a push at the time, we're again going back to September of last year, when the Gateway Hotel, and again this is the fall of an election year that we're talking about, why did there seem to be an indication from even local police that there wasn't a way to identify TDA? In fact, that you had the chief say that very thing. There's no way, you can't just identify a gang member that way.
They're very insulated, so they're not gonna advertise the fact that they're TDA, and now we're seeing the fact that they're not getting tattoos because they're aware that that's an identifier for us.
So that's changed.
That's changed, but again, they're very insulated and they're very close to the ranks when it comes to outsiders coming in. So it's been just good police work that's been able to identify them through post-arrest interviews and the joint operations that we've conducted.
But those post-arrest interviews, the key there is also having the knowledge of how they operate from their inception, from where their origin is, and being able to reach out and speak to our international partners who've had experience identifying them and learning from them was extremely important, because they do research on us the same way we do on them. While they're being processed, they're not just going through the process of getting interrogated or photographed or fingerprinted. They're also taking into account what we do, how we do it, what questions we ask, what we do, and then they pass that information on. So it's like a moving target, because the next person you encounter is going to have awareness of what you're going to be looking for and is going to look to mask that, so that we're not able to identify them. So that's why it's not that easy as if they all look the same or they all have the same tattoos.
I see.
They try to learn from us as much as we learn from them, and that's what also made them such a, to a certain point, difficult target to assess, because while we're trying to do our job and they're being interviewed at the border by a great team that they have over there, and it was comprised of everybody that's at this table, they were sending that information back and telling their folks, don't do A, don't do B, don't do C, don't bring this or the other, so that we wouldn't be able to detect them or identify them.
And adapting
Exactly.
as the situation evolved.
And I think it's important. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think it's important to mention that everybody that we arrest is getting this interview at this time. Whereas when we were, when we were arresting hundreds of thousands of individuals in a fiscal year, the amount of time we could spend on those interviews was much less.
Yeah.
And currently now, we can get really into the interview, specifically if we have any indicators that this person may be associated with Tren De Aragua. Those interviews are very complex and complete, and I think that's something that we've been able to do now that the flow is down.
Now the time allows.
Time allows for that.
You were going to mention something.
Yeah, and Robert, one of the things to keep in mind is DEA has taken a very different approach in terms of identifying these organizations, working the networks, right? And that has helped us here as a team collectively to where when we're engaging these individuals here at the border, being arrested out in the streets, then we leverage that information that we've been able to capture in the past from ongoing investigations, from intelligence gathering, whether it be out of the Andean region, it's Colombia, Peru, Central America, and we're able to put those pieces of those puzzle together when we're doing these interviews here in the United States.
Very good. Well, listen, in the time we have left, gentlemen, I'd like to maybe now focus on the future. Look ahead for what's coming for the El Paso sector, for the El Paso community, and even for national security as a whole. We'll begin here. Talk to me about how things look moving forward now. Now the border is a much different place than it was even a year and a half ago, or a year ago even. So tell me about what you see moving forward.
So what I see now is a doubling down of the effort that we have. We have the support that we needed previously, so now we're able to really dig in and extract and exploit that intelligence that we're gleaning from them to be able to prevent these from occurring again. And I think one of the most important things that we have here is this relationship that we have, the way we work together. It truly is a task force environment, but more than that, it's working together as one agency to be able to move forward. So I think now's the time where also we have to take what we've learned from that and be able to share it with our partners and others so that they're able to mitigate these situations before they take hold in their AORs as well. And then basically replicate the model that we established here to be able to address this problem which started back in 2022. But now with the support that we're getting, we're able to actually address it directly, learn from it, pass that information on so that it can help other communities that are going through it.
So, Chief Sullivan?
And I would say not just specific to El Paso, but we also, now that, I mentioned this before, now that we have more time and effort, we have the ability and the agility and the capability to reach anywhere in the country to go after these national security and public safety threats.
So for the Border Patrol, we're going to focus on the immediate border. We're going to put our resources in between the ports of entry, and we're going to deny that terrain to these criminal organizations. It's very lucrative business to smuggle individuals, to smuggle drugs, and to get those across in between the ports of entry. The U.S. Border Patrol is going to stand fast with our partners in between the ports of entry. We're not going to allow for illegal entries. We're going to continue to work towards zero gotaways. And when we do have gotaways, we're going to work together with our partners to be able to go after those individuals, put them back in our custody, and then be able to remove them from the country. But continued removals from the country. In the border security world, whatever demographic is allowed to stay in the country once they effect illegal entry is the demographic that you're going to have thousands and thousands of people coming across in. In order to keep people from being brought into the criminal organization's custody and being exploited by criminal organizations, we need to stop them from being able to come to the United States illegally. The only way to do that is to be able to apply consequences for the criminal entry and then put individuals with our partners at ICRO, put individuals on planes and return them to their country of origin. It's the safest thing for the migrants. It's the safest thing for the community. It's what hurts the criminal organizations the most, and it's the area that we're going to be focused on here moving forward.
JT?
I think for us in the law enforcement world, action's always faster than reaction. So now we're able to take action. Now that we're not reacting to hundreds of thousands per month, we're able to focus on the criminal organizations that are moving these individuals. We're able to focus on the ports of entry and do the fentanyl investigations and work it not only to the location it's destined, but also back to the country where it came from. And for us, I think through the establishment of the Homeland Security Task Force, which is spoken of in the executive order, it's going to be a whole of government entity. That Homeland Security Task Force is going to be a collaboration that already exists here. And the beauty of that unified command structure that sits there is we already have it, and all we got to do is identify targets to focus on so that we can make our nation safer, we can make our community in El Paso safer, and then we can make the citizens safer.
Absolutely. And to follow up everything that was said here on this table is one thing that we need to do is we can no longer do this by ourselves with one single agency, right? We need to come together, put everything on the table with all the information that we all have within our holdings to make this an effective, whether it's going after TDA, whether it's going after any threat that is coming into the United States, harming our communities. And I think it's happening. And it's been happening for a long time, but I think now these current threats that we're dealing with here in the United States, I think it's making us a wholer approach in terms of targeting these organizations.
Thank you.
Robert, if I may add
Of course.
one thing.
Yeah.
It's TDA today. We don't know what it could be tomorrow. And the collaboration that was spoke at this table is key, and it's what's going to keep El Paso community safe and the rest of the United States safe, is this collaboration that we have together.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, all of you, for your time. We are very, very appreciative of you answering these questions, helping us learn more about what's happening here in our community, and helping us learn more about what's changed here at the border. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.